while Apple is learned to have assured India that there is absolutely no change, quote unquote, in its investment plans for the country, despite US President Donald Trump's statement against the company manufacturing in India. Trump's comments itself are being analyzed and watched very closely. His claim of India agreeing to zero tariff has also led to a sharp political exchange, with the Congress party questioning the government and seeking clarity. Trump's comments come at a time, remember, when Apple was reportedly planning to move away from China and produce a majority of iPhones sold in the US in India in the June quarter. Apple wants to move a quarter of all iPhone production to India in the next few years. In fact, 15% of Apple's total iPhone output comes from India, and $22 billion worth of iPhones have been assembled here with partners Foxconn, Tata Electronics and Pegatron.
We have Apple, as you know, it's coming in. And I had a little problem with Tim Cook yesterday. I said to him, Tim, you're my friend. I treated you very good. You're coming in with $500 billion, but now I hear you're building all over India. I don't want you building in India. You can build in India if you want to take care of India, because India is one of the highest tariff nations in the world. It's very hard to sell into India. And they've offered us a deal where basically they're willing to literally charge us no tariff. So we go from the highest tariff, you couldn't do business in India, we're not even a top 30 in India because the tariff is so high, to a point where they have actually told us, I assume you too, Scott, you were working on that also, that there will be no tariff.
Well, Apple's assurance to India has been reported categorically. Is that enough to negate any concern? Joining me this evening, Rishabh Bhatnagar, my colleague from NDTV Profit, Ashok Chandak, of the Indian Electronic and Semiconductor Association, and Naganand Doreswamy of Idea Spring Capital in Bengaluru. Rishabh, since you report on this space very closely, give us a sense of the kind of reactions you're picking up from the government and industry voices, even if it's off the record.
Right. Veera, over the course of the last 24 hours, spoken to a bunch of top government voices, and all of them have said that there is no sort of concern with regards to Apple changing its expansion plans or even the current sort of plans that it has with regards to India. What sources have told me is the fact that India has very quickly become a major player in terms of smartphone production. That is testament in the fact that India's smartphone exports have risen exponentially, especially over the past decade or so. And that is the change that we've seen. And what we've seen is that Apple and any company's decision to sort of build in India will be based on cost competitiveness. And India is slowly but surely reaching the level of China or of Vietnam. And those cost decisions will continue to guide those investment plans and not a certain head of state's decisions.
Right. Ashok, would you concur with that kind of perception that Rishabh has been picking up from several people in the industry?
My view is we should not worry too much about the weekly changes which have been happening in a global scenario, actually. Statements, counter statements, announcements, backtracking and all those. What I see is India is definitely well placed. Not only smartphone manufacturing, but India has become an integrated part of both Samsung as well as Apple in terms of their smartphone ecosystem and manufacturing. Several players like Foxconn, Pegatron, Tata Electronics, they have set up the operations, they are getting the PLI benefits, new things are coming up. So I think that should continue. And most of the global companies, their plans for manufacturing and supply chain goes for a diversification and doesn't happen overnight change, actually. So my view is, obviously we have to respect what President Mr. Trump is making a statement, but still it's way to go, because things are, as you could see, and everybody watching the TV knows that 1 month there have been many statements and counter statements. India is negotiating a bilateral trade agreement, and there is an aspiration to do $500 billion of bilateral trade between two countries, and which was also kind of supported as ambition from both Honorable Prime Minister Mr. Modi and Mr. Trump. Industry and various ministries are working towards this, actually. And electronics semiconductor will be definitely important basket of this bilateral trade. So also at the point is, some of the global companies, and it may also hold true for the company we are referring, are realizing that globally they need to diversify their entire supply chain and manufacturing footprint as things are become a bit uncertain worldwide, also a bit kind of a give and take kind of a scenarios. Somewhere FTA, somewhere no FTA, duties, 145% becomes 30%, 110% becomes 10%. We can keep talking about it. India is well placed, and I want to take maybe a couple of minutes more here to highlight to all you and viewers. India is working on a very strategically on a good roadmap, courtesy to Ministry of Electronics and IT and various industry players, where we are working on the Semicon India program, which adds value. We're working on an electronic component manufacturing system, which was announced recently, and also PLI benefit. All these put together.
No, I take the point that you're making, that we are solidly placed. You're sending out a message of confidence. But Nag, in terms of directionally, where do you see, do you believe that one needs to have, maybe not from a practical point of view, but from a directional point of view in terms of the statement coming out, does that noise tend to create some kind of concern?
It definitely creates concern because, sorry, please go ahead.
Because, it will create some concern. But I'm also saying that probably in a few weeks that messaging also can soften, because it's almost impossible to say any product that's used in the US should be manufactured in the US. I think it will not be feasible. So to other panelists' points, India is very well placed in manufacturing. It will send immediately the signaling will be bad, but I think things will recover in the weeks to come because, the messages will be softened, and it has to happen that way.
Right. The crisp point that you're making there, but as we go along, would you completely just say that this is something that's a passing cloud that just moves out, Nag?
Yeah, I would say that because if you look at President Trump's statements, he wants as much manufacturing to happen in the US, and Apple is a very well-known name. So, he wants as much as possible to be developed and manufactured in the US. But even Apple cannot do that, I think. And that's what Apple is also coming out and saying. That's why they're saying that they will manufacture things in India. So it's a passing cloud. But the messaging is quite clear. They want to do as much possible in US, but everything will not be possible in the US.
Right. In general, Rishabh, that would pretty much sum up the kind of reactions you've been picking up as well, right?
That's right, Veera. Just to bring up a contrarian point of view that I also came across, there's a leading think tank called the Global Trade Research Initiative, and it's led by Ajay Srivastava, who's a former trade bureaucrat based out of India. Okay. He says that Apple should actually listen to Donald Trump and actually move out some of its production back to the US to contribute to that economy, just to sort of soothe Donald Trump's concerns about the middle class sort of being, and that is the sort of backbone that the US was built on, the hardworking middle class. And that is what Ajay Srivastava said, that this could also benefit India in the sense that India could then be forced to invest in actual deep manufacturing of smartphones rather than just shallow assembly lines. These are his words that I'm reading right now. Right. So he just said that there is a contrarian POV that could also benefit India.
Right. Ashok, last word to you, last 1 minute.
Yeah, my view is surely US wants manufacturing to shift there. But in our electronics and semiconductor sector, it's so diversified and multi-country scenario that not a single country will be able to fulfill all the requirements. So some manufacturing can definitely move to US, and that should move actually. Nothing wrong on that. It should happen. But India still has a good opportunity because worldwide electronics production demand is growing very high. Even India itself, we're looking at a $400 billion industry by 2030. This year it is about close to $150 billion. Huge opportunity exists for India, for the world, and that should happen. So many industries, they will move some or the other production to US, but US will not be able to cater 100% of that requirement, and something will have to still import. And that's where India has the opportunity. And as I narrated, some of the policies are really creating very good value addition and a competitive advantage for the country, and we should leverage that and focus on this $500 billion bilateral treaty. That's a big thing for us.
Absolutely. Important point that you're making there. Thanks to all three of you for joining us. Rhetoric on one side, the realities of doing business and supply chains on the other. That's all we have time for on the Southern View this evening. News and updates continue right here on NDTV. Thanks for watching.